Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about server-side validation in Python. And I've written the exact same script with the exact same form, so this will be a shorter video than the PHP video. But you can see the exact same form here, day3.python.com. Same form, same HTML. Let me jump over to the Python folder and let's go through it. Index.py. So I'm importing CGI and I'm calling CGI.fieldStorage, and that's how I get anything that was submitted to the script via a GET request or a POST request. They'll all come together and I can get them all with this one method called field storage. And I'm putting it into query, and query will be a dictionary. Dictionary is Python's way of saying associative array, and you can just Google that and play around with dictionaries at the Python prompt until you get the feel of them. So just like before in PHP, I'm checking to see if controller is in the query. If it's not in the query, I'm setting it to the default user. Else, if it is in the query, I'm just going to set it to whatever it was set to originally. But there's only one in this script, so if controller is user, then I'm going to import the user and instantiate it and call the dispatch method and send it the query. So let's look at the user's controller. So here's the dispatch method. It checks to see if the action is show register form, and if it so it checks to see if the action is in the query. If it's not in the query, then it will set it to the default show register form. Else, if it is in the query, it'll set it equal to whatever it is. So if the action is show register form, then it'll show register form. It assumes that it's the person's first time here. Else, if the action is perform register, then the person has filled out the form and clicked submit, and it needs to start validating. So it does the same validation routine that happened in PHP. It's just that the code is in Python this time. So it does all the validation. It gets the validation data back, and this is the same data as in the PHP video. This data contains whether any fields have errors, and it contains error messages. So it checks to see if successful is true. If it is, then everything worked out well. Show the success page. Else, show the register form with the query being passed, so that all the fields that the person has already filled out will be filled out again, and the validation data has all the error messages. So show register form function, this is what a person will see. This is what happened when I went to day3.python.com for the first time. It just showed a blank form. So it imports, so from the views folder, from a file called register.py, it imports a class called register, capital R, and then it instantiates that class and sends it the form data and the validation data. It doesn't need a return value. It doesn't need to do anything with the instantiated object. So it just goes off into nothing. So let's look at that. Views.register. So this object is instantiated. It prints out the HTML at the top of the page. Same HTML as last time. The triple tick marks let you print multiple lines in Python. So I'm importing my form builder just like I did in PHP. And so again, maybe it's overkill for this little example, but it would be useful for a large website with many forms. So it's a good thing to know how to do. It basically builds the form for me, builds my radio buttons for me, selects the appropriate one, and does all the form HTML stuff for me. So let's look at that. Views, helpers, form builder. So form header prints the header tag with the action passed as a parameter. And remember, self is always the first parameter. You don't have to send it, but it's always going to be passed for you, and it's always got to be first, and it's always got to be there. So def form closer gets self, even though I don't use it, and it just prints the closing form tag. The error row prints an error row with the correct error message. Text input creates it checks to see if it should be a password, and it prints the correct text input field for me. So it prints the error row if there is an error. This part checks to see if information has already been typed in and passed along. If it has been passed along, then current values get set to that. Otherwise, it gets set to blank string, and then it prints the input tag here with all the divs that it needs for styling purposes. The radio button, self is always first. This is the name of the radio button, and the options are passed along. And this also, in this for loop, it checks to see if the option has already been set, and if it has, it adds that word checked to the input tag. Otherwise, that variable checked is set to a blank string, and it prints out those radio buttons. And the submit method makes the submit button. There should be no blank lines at the end of your Python files. So back to register. So that's form builder. So let's go back to the user controller. So let's look at the validator, form validator. So that's in views, helpers, form validator. So the form validator, when it's first initialized, data is set to a blank dictionary. That's what these curly braces are. And then I set all of these fields equal to blank dictionaries. So this is kind of like dictionaries inside of dictionaries. This syntax is very close, if not exactly the same as JSON syntax with the curly braces and the colons. And you can put JSON objects inside of other JSON objects. So the validate function, I set successful equal to true, and then test all these. If any of these fail, then successful will be set equal to false. So the way I do a regular expression search in Python is RE, and at the top I have to import RE. That gives me access to all the regular expression methods like re.search. And the regular expression syntax is the same across all of your major languages. So this is the same syntax. The caret is the beginning of the string. The square brackets they let you type in a range of characters. And one special symbol inside of square brackets is the dash, so you can do ranges from A to Z, capital A, capital Z, and a space. So it'll match any of those characters once, but then I'll put a plus sign, and it'll match it one or more times. And the dollar matches the end of the line, just like in PHP. And all this is just like in PHP. Same regular expressions, same conditions. And I'm returning self.data just like I did in PHP. So all that would get returned to validation data. If successful is true, then I show the success page, and that will just open up views.register success and import the register success class and instantiate it. So let's look at that real quick. Register success class, when it's instantiated, will print registration success. And that's all it does. And this is where I would connect to the database and insert things and hash the password and create the account and all that stuff. So if the validation was not successful, then it will show the register form again. It'll pass along the query, so things that have already been filled in can be filled in again, and it'll pass in the validation data, which has all the error messages in it. And that is the end of the Python server-side form validation code. All this code will be tarred up in a TGZ file in the class repo and on FSO.